Lenore, the wife of my eldest son, who always treats me like a stranger, visited our home alone. It was rare to see her without my eldest son, Ralph. So as I welcomed her in, "Don't come to the wedding. Jody and I are of different class," she bluntly stated. I was taken aback by Lenore's rudeness, which wasn't entirely new, but I never expected her to go this far. Confused, "What do you mean by that?" I asked. Lenore sighed heavily, as if looking down on me, and began, "I hate how clueless you are. I graduated from a top university and work at the same prestigious trading company as Ralph. But Jody? She went to a third-rate college and is just an insurance salesperson. It's embarrassing to have someone who does a job anyone could do as part of my family." Annoyed, I replied, "Could you not look down on insurance sales? It's not an embarrassing job, you know." As soon as I said this, "Oh, Jody's angry. Scary. Anyway, it's already decided. Ralph will surely agree with me." Lenore retorted with a nasty smile. Exhausted? "Okay," I simply said. "I'm Jody, 65 years old, and I currently work in insurance sales. I've been with the same company since graduation, now working under reemployment. It's a tough job, dealing with failed contracts and customer complaints. But it's rewarding, especially when I land a big new contract and everyone in the sales department congratulates me. I'm a single mother now. My husband and I had differing values, constantly arguing. Ralph, our son, was old enough to witness these unpleasant times. Eventually, the marriage, filled with arguments, ended, and my husband refused to take Ralph with him. Despite financial uncertainties, I chose to raise Ralph myself. Balancing work and parenting, especially through his rebellious phase, was challenging, but I managed. The hardworking Ralph, "I want to marry, and I'd like you to meet her," I raised, told me. It was Lenore, a colleague he grew close to at work. Today was the day Ralph would bring Lenore over. Though Ralph and I lived together, he went out to pick up Lenore. The doorbell rang, and there they were. "Nice to meet you. I'm Lenore. Sorry for the sudden visit. I brought you something small." Ralph and Lenore. She handed me a paper bag with famous cookies from a well-known department store. "Oh my, you didn't have to go through the trouble. Thank you." "No, it's just a small gesture, but—" Lenore modestly gestured. "No, thank you for the lovely gift. Please, come in." I invited Ralph and Lenore in with a smile. We started with a casual conversation. Lenore shared about her upbringing, how she and Ralph got close, and even Ralph's work life, which she spoke of fondly. Then, Lenore curiously asked me, "By the way, what do you do for work, Jody?" Seeing no harm, "I'm in insurance sales," I cheerfully responded. At that moment, I noticed Lenore's smile twist. Was I seeing things? I looked at her face again, but it had returned to normal. We continued with light conversation and then wrapped up the evening. That momentary expression on Lenore's face, what was it all about? Since then, Ralph started bringing Lenore around more often. The matter at hand was wedding preparations. Since my ex-husband definitely won't be attending, I need to do the things Ralph's dad would have done. This was expected ever since my ex refused to take custody of Ralph. I have a lot to cover. Toasts, responses to letters from the mom, and more. I need to start thinking about what to say soon. There's no time to waste. But with work being so busy, it's hard to find the time. Especially with Lenore's increasing visits, my personal time is dwindling. While contemplating this, I continued to entertain Lenore's queries. Suddenly, Lenore started talking about her dress. Lenore said, "I absolutely want a dress with a bright blue and sequins scattered all over. It would look so beautiful. By the way, Jody, what kind of dress did you wear at your wedding?" I was caught off guard. Ralph should have told her I'm already divorced. "Hey," Ralph interrupted, putting his hand on Lenore's shoulder. "Oh, it's okay. I mean, even if you're divorced, it's all in the past, right? I'd be too embarrassed and miserable to ever get divorced. But then, Jody, you're a stranger to me, so I can't really understand your feelings," Lenore said with a laugh. Feeling uncomfortable, I forced a smile and changed the subject. Ralph looked at me, his face full of apology. Lenore, on the other hand, looked triumphantly at me. Her attitude was becoming increasingly troubling, and her constant reference to me as a stranger was concerning. Every time something came up, "Jody's a stranger after all," she'd say. Ralph would always admonish her, but Lenore seemed unfazed. Maybe she really doesn't have a good impression of me. Her attitude was deteriorating. Even Ralph seemed to be feeling uneasy about her lately. I was concerned about the thoughtful gestures he'd sometimes make. In the midst of all this, Lenore came to visit alone. I wondered who it could be when the doorbell rang and there she was, standing by herself. I was used to seeing her with Ralph, but I decided to let her in, though it felt a bit odd with Ralph not around. Right at the entrance, Lenore looked down on me. "Jody, our class is different, so please don't come to the wedding," and said. I was taken aback by her abrupt rudeness. "What do you mean?" I asked, frowning. I knew Lenore could be impolite, but this was beyond my expectations. "Huh," Lenore sighed heavily. "Ugh, I just can't stand your cluelessness, Jody. I graduated from a top university and work in a top trading company, like Ralph. But you're just an insurance salesperson from a third-rate college. It's embarrassing to have someone like you in our family," she said, with a look of utter disdain. I retorted, irked. "Could you please not look down on insurance work? It's not the shameful job you think it is." As soon as I stood up to her, "Jody's angry. Scary. Anyway, this is decided. Ralph will surely agree with me," Lenore exclaimed with a nasty smile. She came here without even discussing it with Ralph? I was astounded by Lenore's lack of planning. The idea that the groom's mom wouldn't attend the wedding was unheard of. And then I realized Lenore had initially been hiding her true self. Exhausted from dealing with Lenore, I simply said, "Understood," and sent Lenore home. But privately, I was quite irritated, despite my tiredness. I didn't want someone as rude as Lenore marrying my dear Ralph. However, the wedding date was already set, and there was only about a week left. What should I do? I was in deep thought. That's it! I had an idea. Then came the wedding day. At the reception, Lenore's friends, in flashy outfits, were greeting guests and collecting congratulatory money. It seems that the parents-in-law are in Lenore's dressing room. I was secretly waiting in Ralph's dressing room. Of course, without letting Lenore know. I had given Ralph a voice recorder, telling him about my interaction with Lenore that day. Luckily, I had recorded it using a voice recorder I happened to have for work. Initially disturbed, Ralph quickly understood after hearing the recording. In the end, Ralph was crying and got very angry for me. He decided to cancel the wedding and break off the engagement with Lenore. But it was just a week away from the wedding. Canceling now would incur a hefty cancellation fee. So, we decided to give Lenore a bit of a painful lesson. Finally, the wedding began. As it was a restaurant wedding, the ceremony itself felt more like a casual reception. I decided to wait near a door close to the exit, where I could see inside without being noticed by Lenore. "Next, the entrance of the bride and groom," announced the host, and the doors opened for Ralph and Lenore to enter. Initially smiling, Lenore's expression froze as she glanced around. "Ugh," I muttered. Understandably so. On the wedding day, all the relatives were inexplicably absent. It made sense for Ralph's relatives to be missing. Ralph and I had gone around to each relative, bowing our heads and asking them not to attend. But Lenore's relatives were also absent. The seats were all empty. The parents-in-law seemed awkwardly scanning around. They probably couldn't understand why no one was sitting at their relatives' tables. Lenore's friends, too, seemed perplexed upon seeing two completely empty tables, quietly discussing something among themselves. In this situation, Ralph borrowed a microphone from the host and announced, "The wedding is cancelled, and this will be a dinner party instead," laughing loudly. "What?" exclaimed Lenore. But this wasn't the end of the revenge on Lenore. As the venue descended into chaos, Ralph continued. "Today, I was supposed to marry Lenore, standing beside me. However, Lenore has been treating my mom as a stranger and has always been terrible to her. She even commanded that my mom not attend today's wedding. Here's the proof." Then, the audio from that day played in the hall. "Don't come to the wedding because Jody and I are of different classes." The ugly laughter of Lenore echoed along with her words. Lenore's dad, Huey, and mom, Tiana, seemed to have just learned the reason for my absence from the wedding. They asked Lenore in a shaken voice, "Hey, Lenore, what's this about?" "Lenore, this is a lie, right? You wouldn't say such awful things, would you?" Their expressions, a mix of confusion and anger, were clear as they confronted Lenore, who stood there in her dress, her face turning pale. Ralph calmly questioned Lenore. "So, do you understand why this happened?" Lenore, seemingly distraught, yelled in an annoying tone, "How would I know?" The parents-in-law were also too overwhelmed by the unfolding truths to respond. Since no one was answering, Ralph spoke up again, more energetically. "Then let's have this person explain. It's my mom!" With Ralph's cue, a staff member opened the door on the exit side. Bathed in the spotlight, I stood before Ralph, Lenore, and the parents-in-law. At that moment, Lenore glared at me furiously. "It's all your fault! You ruined my wedding, you worthless old hag from a third-rate university and a third-rate company!" Lenore shouted, her hair disheveled. Her hairdo was a mess, partly ruined by the disturbed parents-in-law. The dress was misshapen, ruining the beautiful sequined gown. "Lenore, what are you saying? That's Ralph's mom!" Huey loudly reprimanded her. "Yes, Lenore, that's beyond rude!" Tiana, her eyes brimming with tears, was appalled by her daughter's disgraceful behavior. And Lenore, "It's not rude. Besides," was about to complain to me more when, "Enough!" I sternly interrupted her. "I get it, Lenore, you don't like me, but I won't tolerate such disdainful attitude towards me, even if I was to be your in-law." I told her, and Lenore clicked her tongue. Her true nature was completely exposed. "Lenore, I didn't know you were like this. My image of you gets worse day by day," Ralph muttered, looking disillusioned. "Why do you think Lenore's relatives aren't here today?" I asked Lenore. "I don't know." Lenore turned away, indifferent. "Yep, unfortunate. Your lack of understanding, Lenore, is really detestable." I casually threw back the line Lenore had said to me that day. Lenore glared at me, her expression twisted and unbearable to watch. Ralph was also distancing himself from Lenore. "You! Stop it already! That's way too rude to me!" Lenore seemed to have completely forgotten her past remarks to me. "No, the rude one is you!" Ralph retorted, unable to hold back. "Huh." I sighed in exasperation and explained. "Well, the answer is, all of Lenore's relatives are actually my clients, so I explained the situation to them and asked them to not attend. Did you know, Lenore, you looked down on me as some third-rate insurance salesperson from a third-rate company. But the company I work for is a foreign multinational, much larger than the company you work for, and yes, I earn several times more than you. Indeed, my company is quite famous globally, and since I've been there from the start of the branch, I handle a lot of clients, and have a wide network. Which is why, coincidentally, Lenore's relatives were also my clients, and they agreed to help out this time. By the way, when the relatives were told the truth, they were shocked and said they'd distance themselves from Lenore, but that's something she'll find out later." "I didn't know that," Lenore muttered, stunned. "Well, that's Lenore for ya, slow on the uptake." Ralph laughed heartily, showing no sympathy. However, Ralph suddenly stopped laughing and turned serious. No matter how smart you are, or which famous company you work for, I can't marry someone who looks down on my mom. My mom is not someone you can belittle. Today, the engagement is off, and Lenore and I are strangers. Please never involve yourself with me or my mom again. You're right. Given that Lenore always treated me like a stranger, it probably doesn't matter to her. But I never want anything to do with her again. I don't want to see any of your faces. Don't ever come near us again, I said sternly, almost spitting the words out. Lenore and the parents-in-law, their faces red, remained silent, heads bowed. Of course, the engagement was broken. The wedding was cancelled, and the event soon ended. The parents-in-law, being sensible people, apologized to Ralph and me multiple times. They also agreed to cover all the expenses of the wedding. The compensation discussion was scheduled for a later date with the parents-in-law and me. Lenore's reasonable parents would likely take responsibility for her recent blunder. Lenore resigned from her job afterward. We hadn't invited anyone from Ralph and Lenore's workplace to the wedding, but rumors about the debacle had spread. Colleagues sympathized with Ralph, but were harsh towards Lenore. In a workplace that values teamwork, Lenore became an outcast. Eventually, unable to withstand the constant bad-mouthing, the mentally strong Lenore quit. One day, she left a resignation letter on her desk and disappeared. Before vanishing, Lenore approached Ralph. I want to get back together with you. She pleaded for reconciliation and tell everyone at work that I'm not bad. But Ralph refused everything. Well, with her attitude, returning to how things were was impossible. She also came to me several times, asking, tell Ralph to get back together with me. But I ignored all her requests. Lenore is likely disowned by the parents-in-law by now, so where Lenore is and what she's doing is unknown to anyone. Neither Ralph nor I want to know her whereabouts. 3 years have passed, and Ralph and I live peacefully. We remodeled our house with the compensation money from the parents-in-law. Ralph actually married someone else, a nurse introduced by a friend. She's straightforward and fearless, always speaking her mind to me. But she always has my best interests at heart, so I try to listen to her. Ralph's new wife even offered to live with me, worrying about me being alone. Are your parents okay with this? I asked, and she replied that her parents are happy together, and she'd just be a bother there. So, Ralph's new family and I decided to live together in this remodeled house. Actually, we're about to have one more. Ralph's wife is expecting a baby in about 3 months. Work is busy, but fun, and the family will soon become noisier, but seemingly more enjoyable. Looking forward to the busier days ahead with the baby, I feel motivated to keep going today.